When I learned of the African Union's theme of the year for 2025, like many, I immediately envisioned actual reparations negotiations led by a team from the African Union on one side and government officials from the Vatican, Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, France, Britain, and the United States on the other side. And once and for all, negotiate the terms of the just reparations due to African people for 573 years, 2 months, and 13 days of chattel enslavement, colonialism, and neocolonialism that was launched by the Papal Dom Diversus Apostolic Edict and conducted through asiento monopoly war contracts. After all, it has already been determined that this was a crime against humanity, perhaps the greatest such crime, and has no statute of limitations. And so in my childlike understanding of the world, everyone knows this was not just wrong, it was evil. That no one has ever been punished, and that now in 2025, everyone knows that reparations is the right thing to do. And without this justice, there will be no peace, ever. Reparations is the hope of all right-thinking people, both African and non-African. Of course, such reparations negotiations did not take place in 2025. When the Honorable Commissioner, Dr. Letha Mujimi Ogana, invited me to speak on this end-of-the-year panel, she stated that, among other things, we will be reflecting on the progress made since Resolution 616 was adopted, and that I could share my vision on what we should achieve during the decade with reference to ancestry and reparations. So I now take some time to do just that, to reflect on what progress has been made since I appeared at the 83rd session and attempted to ignite action by submitting 4 recommendations. In the interest of time, I will limit my presentation to just the first 2 of those recommendations. My first recommendation was that the Commission and the African Union follow the model of the state of Illinois, which I helped develop with State Representative Carol Ammons, and convene discussions with the Vatican along with the holders of the Catholic Church's asiento monopoly war contracts about their obligation to provide a remedy for the war damage of ethnocide through African ancestry DNA testing, which a study showed that 75% of the respondents would take if provided free of charge as a form of reparations. I had expected the African Union to reach out to me and work together to convene such discussions, but that never happened. No one from the African Union contacted me to even ask questions or find out more information. It was as if my recommendation fell on deaf ears, which is surprising since I had previously raised the issue at the Global Circle for Reparations Healing Accra Summit 2 event in March of 2025, and specifically raised it with Angela Odai, head of the Diaspora division at CEDO African Union Commission. However, an attempt was made by civil society to engage the Vatican just days after the 83rd ACHPR 83rd Summit. Cam Howard, co-convener of the Global Circle for Reparations and Healing and chair of its Interreligious Actors Working Group, the same group that delivered the presentment to the Holy See in furtherance of reparations back in 2022, had invited me to a symposium organized on reparations and organized by Omnis Gentes, the Association of Students of the Pontifical Urbaniana University in Rome, that took place May 25th, 2025. Unfortunately, no funds were provided, and there was no conversation which initiated with the Vatican on providing a program for free voluntary DNA testing to remedy 8 generations of ethnocide. Fortunately, I will be raising this issue on November 13th on a panel on reparations in the Vatican at the Second International Seminar on Historic Reparations in Brazil. Thus, lineage restoration through African ancestry, maternal and paternal genetic testing is the justice delivery mechanism repairing the harm of ethnocide. It can be strategically implemented via a reparations agreement with the Vatican. And this must be a focus of the African Union's reparations policy coherence and pilot programs launched at the beginning of the second international decade for people of African descent, as proclaimed by the United Nations, which will span from January of this year to December of 2034. This underscores the fact that reparations transcends monetary compensation. My second recommendation at the 83rd session of the ACHPR was that the Commission pass a resolution on the Afro-descendants' right of return and the African Union develop a comprehensive Afro-descendant citizenship policy that would recognize their status as a unique class of immigrants never before contemplated in law. The issue has come front and center this year. On September 2nd, 2024, on the eve of the theme of this year, Benin became the first African country to specifically adopt a law offering people of African descent the opportunity to acquire nationality by recognition. Law 2024-31 on the recognition of Benin nationality for people of African descent states that any person aged 18 or over who, according to their genealogy, has a sub-Saharan African ancestor who was deported from the African continent as part of the slave trade and the triangular trade is eligible. The cost is $100, and citizenship is granted after just 3 months from the date of notification of receipt of a completed file. Following Benin, in January and February of 2025, Guinea-Bissau granted citizenship to 21 Afro-descendants of Guinean origin based on the African ancestry test result, earning President Umaro Sissoko Embalo a letter of commendation from this commission. Great expectations were raised when it was announced that Burkina Faso would also grant citizenship to Afro-descendants. Unfortunately, on September 1st, Burkina Faso's Transitional Legislative Assembly passed law number 012-2025/ALT, setting forth the legal baseline for nationality in Burkina Faso. The legislation did not recognize Afro-descendants of Burkinabe origin as a unique class of immigrants with a right to return under international law, and specifically the Geneva Convention. Rather than granting citizenship as was promised, the Parliament's new law leaves it as an unaddressed and unanswered question of legal obligation. Due to the high-profile nature of the expected citizenship conferment ceremony, which was scheduled to take place in just a few days, its cancellation and rebranded offer of permanent residence has caused much grief and disillusionment among Afro-descendants and quite a bit of division among Africans, both at home and abroad. The entire affair underscores the need for a definitive ACHPR resolution on the Afro-descendants' right to return and a comprehensive African Union citizenship policy for Afro-descendants. Ideally, the African Union should request an advisory opinion on the fundamental legal questions which have already been drafted and submitted repeatedly, both to the African Union and the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. Lastly, my journey from the cornfields of Chicago suburbs to repatriation to my Balanta ancestral homeland has done Alex Haley, author of the famous Roots, one better, and is a concrete example of the use of DNA testing and citizenship for bringing about repair. In my case, it is the first time that a victim of ethnocide resulting from transatlantic enslavement has regained their ancestral identity, has returned to their ancestral village, and taken a wife of the same ancestry to restore the severed bloodline. It just so happens that I am the president of the Balanta Society in America and leader of the Lineage Restoration movement, and my wife happens to be the Balanta princess, the daughter of the first and only Balanta president of Guinea-Bissau, Dr. Kumbayala. This marriage of Balanta leading families on both sides of the Atlantic is now the quintessential example, the symbol, the face of the decade of reparations and repatriation, showing that it is possible to reclaim one's original identity, return to the land, and regain one's lost language and culture, and reintegrate into the African family and society. This, and not investment banking or legal training, is the process that makes one an African expert on reparations, which could guide such professions. The African Committee of Experts on Reparations cannot be composed solely of technocrats. It must consist of people, at least one, and if not me, someone who has advanced the most in internal reparations, the self-repair and recovery from ethnocide, and has a track record of helping others do the same. Thank you so much.